Imagine standing alone in a massive airport terminal at 3 in the morning. The overhead lights glare down, painting the polished floors in a sterile glow. Everything looks spotless. No shadows hide in the corners. No monsters hunt you from the dark. Yet your palms sweat. Your chest tightens. Your heart beats faster as a sudden wave of panic locks your joints. Your biological survival system alerts your body to danger, bending your perception of a completely safe environment. Why does an everyday place built for thousands of people terrify us when it is empty? We feel a deep psychological glitch when a structure loses its crowd. Our senses misinterpret the heavy silence, warning us that something is fundamentally wrong. We walk through these transit stations every day without a second thought. Malls, schools, and subway platforms protect us when they are busy. But when the people vanish, the architecture shifts. It strips away our comfort and exposes a primitive fear. This is not a ghost story. This is cold, hard brain science. Your mind acts as a constant radar, constantly mapping your surroundings to keep you alive. When an environment violates its own blueprint, your cognitive gears grind to a halt. We start to question the very air we breathe. This unsettling mechanism opens a door to a much deeper, more troubling mystery. What if our modern world is actually playing tricks on our evolutionary design? What if the structures we build to protect us are accidentally designed to trigger our worst nightmares? The answer lies deep inside our history, hidden within the biological wiring of our own brains. As we step further into this quiet void, we discover a hidden glitch that connects us all. We are not just looking at empty buildings, we are peeling back the layers of human nature itself. Every cold chill and racing pulse proves that your ancient instincts are still fighting to control you. Think about the last time you felt that sudden wave of dread while walking alone in a quiet hallway. Are you truly master of your own senses? Or are you just a prisoner to a brain that refuses to let you feel safe? To understand why these specific environments disturb us, we have to look closely at how human beings interact with geography. Our minds do not just see walls, floors, and ceilings as random pieces of concrete and metal. We naturally assign a distinct psychological purpose to every single corner of our world. A home represents a safe harbor for rest and vulnerability. A workplace demands focus, drive, and active production. A quiet park invites us to step away from our worries and connect with nature. These locations have a permanent anchor in our minds because their purpose is clear. They exist to hold human life, to shelter it, and to give it a steady foundation. But our modern world requires us to constantly move, and to support this movement, we have built an entirely different kind of architecture. This brings us to a unique category of design that psychologists call transitional spaces or intermediate environments. You pass through them every day without ever giving them a second thought. Think of long hotel hallways, empty waiting rooms, silent subway platforms, and lonely highway rest stops. These structures are built for one single reason, which is to help people move from point 1 to point 2. They are the gears of our civilization, designed exclusively for transit. They are the pathways between where you were and where you are going. Because they are built only for traveling through, they do not possess a true identity of their own. They are functional, cold, and entirely neutral. They do not ask you to stay, and they do not offer a permanent place to rest. An intermediate space borrows its entire soul and meaning from the moving crowd. When a subway platform is packed with hundreds of commuters rushing to catch a train, the environment works exactly the way it should. It feels alive because it fulfills its physical purpose. The heavy walls absorb the loud chatter, the sound of footsteps, and the chaotic energy of human life. The space becomes a backdrop for our stories, our daily rush, and our shared schedules. In those busy hours, you never feel uneasy because the presence of other people validates the existence of the building. The crowd gives the glass and steel a reason to exist. The environment is warm with human activity, and your mind feels completely comfortable because everything makes perfect sense. However, the moment the clock ticks past midnight and the crowd completely disappears, a profound transformation takes place. The space is suddenly stripped of its purpose, leaving behind a cold, physical shell. This is where the psychological identity of the building completely breaks down. When a single human being stands completely still in a deserted transit zone, a severe mental mismatch occurs. You are stationary in a place that was engineered only for motion. You are staying in a room that was built under the strict rule that no one should ever stay. The environment immediately feels deeply unnatural because your very presence there has become an error in the system. Without the rushing crowd to give it life, the bright lights look far too bright. The endless rows of empty chairs look hauntingly empty, and the long corridors stretch out into infinity. The location enters a strange gray zone of identity. It is no longer functioning as a busy highway of human life, yet it cannot become a quiet home or a peaceful sanctuary either. It hangs in a state of permanent incompletion, trapped between what it was and what it should be. The human mind is incredibly sensitive to this lack of balance. When we are stuck in a location that has lost its meaning, our brain interprets that empty space as a deep structural wrongness. We begin to feel like uninvited ghosts, walking through a dead world that has forgotten why it was built in the first place. This feeling grows stronger with every second of silence, forcing us to realize how much we rely on the presence of others to feel secure. The walls seem to stare back at us, offering no comfort, no answers, and no escape from the creeping loneliness. We rarely stop to think about how much our comfort depends on the invisible social contracts built into our architecture. When those contracts break, our confidence goes away with them. You look at a row of closed doors in an empty hallway, and your mind struggles to find a reason for their existence. Why are they there if no one is using them? Who are they hiding? The physical world becomes a giant question mark, and your senses start to work against you. You become hyper-aware of your own breathing, the sound of your jacket rustling, and the sheer vastness of the empty air around you. The space feels alien because it has been separated from human time, existing in a vacuum where our rules no longer apply. It is an empty stage after the play has ended, but the lights were left on by mistake. This unsettling shift in how we perceive our surroundings forces us to look past the surface of these lonely structures and examine the ancient evolutionary machinery that quietly dictates our deepest fears. When we peel back the layers of our modern lives, we find that our advanced civilization sits on top of a primitive brain. The discomfort you feel in a deserted transit hub is not an overactive imagination, nor is it a sign of weakness. It is the direct result of biological programming that has kept our species alive for hundreds of thousands of years. Have you ever wondered why your body reacts so violently to an empty room where nothing is happening? To find the answer, we must look past our smartphones and skyscrapers and step back into a time when survival was a daily struggle. Our ancestors survived by being constantly on guard. The fear we feel in these empty places is a beautifully preserved gift from the past, built to protect us from threats we can no longer see. The first major scientific pillar that explains this reaction comes from evolutionary psychology, specifically through a concept known as error management theory. For thousands of years, human survival was a game of guessing the worst-case scenario. If an early human walked up to a popular and highly active watering hole or a communal camp zone and found it completely silent and abandoned, the brain did not think about how peaceful the scenery was. Instead, the brain immediately assumed a disaster had occurred. It assumed a deadly predator was hunting nearby, a violent disease had wiped out the group, or an enemy tribe had launched a sudden attack. In the wild, assuming a safe area was dangerous kept you alive. Assuming a dangerous area was safe got you killed. Therefore, human evolution favored the paranoid, the anxious, and the deeply suspicious. When you stand in a deserted modern shopping center at 4 in the morning, your ancient survival brain does not understand the concept of business hours or closing times. It simply looks at a massive space designed for thousands of people and notices that everyone has vanished. The primitive alarm system inside your amygdala pulls the emergency lever before your conscious mind can even process the situation. It treats the empty mall exactly like an ancient crime scene, assuming everyone fled from a hidden threat. It floods your body with stress hormones, dials up your heart rate, and forces you to feel an intense urge to escape. You are experiencing an ancient survival mechanism misfiring in a modern world that no longer requires it. The second scientific pillar lies within cognitive science and how the brain processes daily patterns. The human mind organizes the world using mental shortcuts called schemas. A schema is essentially a subconscious blueprint of how an environment should look, sound, and behave. You have a steady blueprint for a busy train station, which includes the sound of chatter footsteps and moving trains. You also have a completely separate blueprint for a quiet graveyard, which includes low-light stone structures and total stillness. Your brain relies on these blueprints to save energy, allowing you to walk through life without constantly re-evaluating every single object you see. An empty transitional space creates a massive and frustrating glitch in these mental blueprints. A deserted hotel hallway or an empty school corridor combines elements of two completely opposite schemas. It has the modern design, bright wallpaper, and clean structure of a safe and active building, but it possesses the dead silence and complete isolation of a tomb. The brain simply cannot categorize the situation. It asks itself if this is a safe zone or a danger zone, but it cannot find a clear answer. Because the reality in front of your eyes does not match any existing mental blueprint, your cognitive gears grind to a halt. This deep mental mismatch creates an immediate feeling of creepiness. The environment feels wrong because it violates the rules of predictability that your brain relies on to feel secure. To expand on this comfort level, we must look at environmental psychology and the groundbreaking work of researchers who study the mechanics of discomfort. One of the leading experts in this field, Dr. Frank McAndrew, discovered that true fear is very different from creepiness. True fear is triggered by a clear and recognizable threat, such as a wild animal running directly toward you. Creepiness, however, is triggered by ambiguity. It is the agonizing state of not knowing for sure if you are actually in danger. It is the gray zone where your brain is forced to guess. In a quiet and empty underground parking garage, there are no visible threats. But because the space is wide open, full of blind spots, and completely devoid of other people, you cannot prove that you are safe either. You cannot tell if someone is hiding behind the next concrete pillar or if you are truly alone. This complete lack of clarity forces the brain into a state of extreme hyper-awareness. Your mind begins to amplify every tiny sound from the drip of a pipe to the hum of a ventilation fan or the echo of your own shoes. The brain burns a massive amount of psychological energy trying to solve the riddle of the empty room, leaving you feeling deeply exhausted, exposed, and vulnerable. This constant scanning is an involuntary reflex. Your brain is trying to find patterns in the emptiness, searching for any sign of life that can confirm whether the space is secure. When it finds nothing but silence, the anxiety does not go away, it actually intensifies. The longer you remain in the space, the more your brain treats the lack of information as a threat. We are trapped inside a biological paradox, using ancient tools to navigate a modern landscape that no longer fits our design. This deep biological tension shows us that our modern buildings do far more than just hold empty space. They are actively manipulating our deepest survival mechanisms, turning a simple walk into a silent battle between our ancient instincts and our modern reality, pushing us forward to uncover the specific physical triggers that bring this hidden dread to life. The abstract mechanics of the human brain are only half the story because biology always requires a physical stage to play out. The creeping dread we experience in these lonely locations is rarely a sudden explosion of fear. Instead, it is slowly built up by very specific physical design choices that accidentally exploit our deepest psychological vulnerabilities. Modern architecture is engineered for massive efficiency, smooth transit, and maximum crowd control. But when you strip away the people, those exact same efficient designs turn into highly effective psychological traps. We have to ask ourselves how simple concrete, glass, and artificial light can combine to trick our senses so completely. The answer lies in the subtle ways these structures manipulate our sensory input, turning everyday convenience into an artificial cage. Consider the way sound behaves when a public environment loses its crowd. In a normal busy day, the constant rustle of clothes, the murmur of distant conversations, and the shuffling of feet create a thick, warm blanket of white noise. This background noise is comforting because it constantly tells your brain that you are surrounded by your own kind. It also masks the harsh mechanical sounds of the building itself. But when the crowd leaves, this protective blanket is violently ripped away, and the silence becomes incredibly loud. Suddenly, the heavy industrial hum of the ventilation system becomes a deafening roar that vibrates deep in your chest. The tiny click of a distant light switch echoes down the hallway like a sharp gunshot. Most importantly, the sound of your own footsteps is magnified and thrown back at you by the hard, flat surfaces. Your primitive survival brain, which is permanently wired to listen for a hidden threat approaching from behind, gets completely confused by these late reflections. Every single time you take a step, your mind briefly panics, misinterpreting the echo of your own shoe as someone else walking right behind you in the dark void. Beyond the distortion of sound, modern architecture uses extreme visual symmetry and endless repetition to disorient our minds. Think about the physical design of a standard hotel hallway or a corporate office corridor. It consists of identical doors, identical carpets, and identical light fixtures stretching down a long, straight line into the dark distance. When these hallways are filled with luggage and travelers, the design is highly functional and easy to navigate. But when the space is empty, this endless repetition removes all sense of physical orientation. Your eyes desperately wander, struggling to find a single unique landmark to focus on. The environment begins to look completely artificial, like a glitching computer simulation or a bad dream world where the basic rules of logic no longer apply. You start to feel trapped in a visual loop, which triggers a subtle, heavy form of claustrophobia, even though you are standing in a wide-open area. We can see these environmental triggers playing out in common universal snapshots that look familiar to anyone across the globe. Think of a high school building during the quiet months of summer break. The classrooms sit empty, the desks are completely bare, and the colorful posters on the walls look totally out of place without the vibrant energy of students. The massive contrast between what the space should be and what it currently is creates a deep sense of sadness and discomfort. Or think of a brightly lit 24-hour diner at dawn. The neon signs are buzzing. The coffee pot is warm, but there are 0 customers and no staff in sight. The automated machinery of human comfort keeps running at maximum capacity, but there is no one left to comfort. You are looking at a system that is functional, but empty, a world that is running on autopilot while humanity has completely vanished. Consider an amusement park after closing time. The giant roller coasters and colorful wheels, which were carefully designed to create joy, laughter, and controlled adrenaline, sit completely frozen in the dark. Without the crowds, they look like giant skeletal monsters waiting silently in the quiet night. This is the true essence of dark psychology hidden inside modern design. We have spent centuries building a massive world that functions beautifully when crowded, but we never stop to consider how it would look when left alone. The moment we step away, the concrete and steel turn on our senses, exposing our deepest biological vulnerabilities. These places isolate us, strip away our social identities, and force us to confront the raw, unfiltered reality of our surroundings. They become temporary mental cages, trapping us with our own thoughts and forcing us to question whether we truly belong in the artificial spaces we build. By observing these strange physical triggers, we begin to realize that the cold structural vacuum around us is holding up a dark mirror to a much larger truth about our shared human nature. When we step back and look at the evidence, a comforting yet chilling truth begins to emerge. The empty spaces we fear are not haunted by ghosts, demons, or monsters. They are entirely neutral structures made of concrete, glass, wood, and wire. An empty airport terminal cannot hurt you. A quiet school hallway has no desire to do you harm, and a deserted subway platform is just a peaceful mix of metal and stone. The discomfort we feel in these intermediate zones is not caused by the walls around us, but by the mind within us. These empty rooms act as a psychological mirror. When we are stripped of our friends, our crowds, our routines, and the constant noise of daily life, we are forced to stand completely alone with our own biology. In those quiet moments, the modern world falls away. It does not matter how smart we are, how much money we have, or what technology we carry in our pockets. Inside an empty room, we are instantly reminded that beneath our modern clothes, we are still just fragile, primitive creatures ruled by ancient survival instincts that were forged in the dark thousands of years ago. But this realization opens up a deeper, more manipulative question about the nature of our reality. If your brain can easily glitch and manufacture intense dread out of absolute nothingness, how can you ever trust your senses again? How do you know that the security you feel in a crowded room is real and not just another comforting trick played by your mind to keep you from panicking? Can we truly trust what we see, or is our perception just a fragile illusion waiting to break at any moment? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below, because we need to openly debate whether our everyday sanity is actually as solid as we like to think. If you are brave enough to dive deeper into the darkest corners of human psychology, hit that subscribe button. And leave a like if you made it to the very end. I am Beyond the Creep, and I will see you in the next dark corner.